Thank you for joining Think, Build, Launch podcast. This program is an extension of Marl Startup Studio. Marl Startup Studio was started to support students and first-time founders of all ages while they are at the idea stage of their startup. We believe there are so many innovative ideas in our community that get missed simply because people do not have the structure they need to take their idea into an actionable plan, and that is exactly what we do. Today, we are lucky to have Jessica Karr, the founder of Coyote Ventures, one of only 18 venture capital firms dedicated to women's health and well-being. You might have known Jessica from she was employee number 12 as a biochemist in Impossible Burger. And she's an angel investor, venture partner at the Republic, and formerly worked as a principal at Celebrity Ventures Fund. She launched Coyote Ventures in 2021 to address the $1 trillion opportunity in women's health and wellness. And we are so excited to have her speaking with us today. I loved the message that you have on Twitter is what you do matters. And it's your Twitter header right now. So I wanted you to tell us a little bit more about that central theme and its importance to you.
Definitely. Yeah, it's been my header for a while. I thought it was beautiful, but the core message being that we are all, connected globally as well as locally. And you might not think, that what you're doing will make a difference, but even small things like, cutting someone off in traffic might have an effect that escalates and things like that. So pretty much everything you do does matter and have an effect. So we are all interconnected that way. And I think since I was young, I did realize that I, wanted to do things that did make a broad difference. And even when I was in third grade, I wrote a letter to the president about how I was so frustrated that I couldn't recycle my Coke cans. And so I was living in West Texas, where recycling is still not happening as much, but I, always did want to have a positive impact and sort of leave, like they say, leave the place a better place after you're there. And I think that could be, a good philosophy in business as well. We're always moving 100 miles an hour and just bringing a little more mindfulness, awareness to the ways that you might be having an impact. You don't always even know. But I like bringing this reminder to myself and to others.
That's really wonderful. There's a lot of people that get an MBA and they do a lot of business development and then they go on and be an entrepreneur. But you're the very first biochemist that I've spoken with that has become an entrepreneur. And beyond being an entrepreneur, you're actually funding other people. So what is it like for many of you? Jessica Karr was a biochemist during the start of Impossible Foods. And so what can you share about the link between biochemistry and entrepreneurship? And was it a hard bridge to cross, or does it make sense for any other chemists out there to know that they also have the ability to do what you did?
Yeah, they definitely do. And I had a very positive influence who was the founder of Impossible Foods, was also a biochemist. He was about 60 years old when he was a professor at Stanford, and he became a very passionate vegan and wanted to bring an option to, and he was very passionate about solving climate change. So he wanted to bring the solution into the markets, realizing that that's where you could make a positive change by expanding the offerings that people could choose to eat Impossible instead of meat. And I had just finished grad school, so I was in a PhD program for biochem and left with a master's because I felt, for me, I didn't want to spend the next 6 years doing 80 hours a week in a lab where I wasn't sure, where my papers would really end up in terms of being a tangible, product. So Impossible was a great fit. Admittedly, at the time, I had no idea that there were other options for me besides either going to work at a pharmaceutical company, which we call industry, or academia, which most PhDs do not end up in academia either. So I admittedly knew very little about startups and innovation. So it was a very fortunate opportunity for me to start working at Impossible. And I would say if you are, technical, there's a lot of great opportunities for you to bring your expertise into the business world. So not only for chemistry and biochemistry, but I would say for engineering and other technical fields, I would definitely encourage you to look out at what other innovations could be launched that you're really excited about. And often, business people could use that technical partner. And so I definitely encourage that.
That's great. Thank you, Jessica. I'm more than ever, I'm sure because of COVID and also because of depression and loneliness, I've never seen more well-being products on the market than I see right now. And so it's really interesting. Can you tell us about how Coyote Ventures got started and the focus of Coyote Ventures? I wanted people to hear it from your own words.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, so the journey, I was early at Impossible, so learning about that journey from inception, product development through the public launch, and taking that lens. So I had worked with other startups. Over 2 years, I worked with about a dozen companies, and some of them international, a lot of them in food technology. And I started to see these other solutions for wellness and women's health popping up, and just became more and more passionate about, solving for half of the planet that's been historically marginalized. And so taking my consulting experience and working briefly at a multifamily office, helping their investment team, and then realized like during that time, I had developed this thesis around women's health, and there was only a couple funds focused on it, and most of them were started after 2020. So right now there's somewhere between 8 to 10 of these other women's health funds. And so taking that lens of like science focus and innovation, solving for half of the planet, I launched Coyote in early 2021. And so far we've made 6 investments to date, and looking at different conditions that solely differently and disproportionately affect female health and wellness.
That's wonderful. In our community, we have Chloe Capital, which is an early fund in upstate New York that actually started focusing on female founders. Happy to make a connection there if you don't know those folks.
Sarah Coons?
I think it's Kate Catrini and Elisa. I just, it's one of those things where I'm like, I just have hashtag Chloe Capital. And so happy to make the connection only because, well, I think, I definitely want to respect all demographics on our program, but it's exciting to see more funding go to women. And for there was an article, I think about 3 years ago, that talked about the women over 50 control so much money, and the idea that people are not, really focused on women 50 years and older is just mind-boggling from a purely greedy perspective, So in terms of turning it into a question, right now the statistics say that about 3% of VC money ends up going to women. Are you seeing in your sector that shift? And how can people on your platform get more of that VC money?
Yeah, definitely. That the numbers across the board still stay at that 3%. Unfortunately, I think it's even declined a little bit. 2021 was a pretty hot year, and overall venture funding increased, but teams that are solely female founders did not see a percentage-wise increase. Total dollar amount, yes, but there was a total dollar amount increase in overall venture funding. In women's health, about 80% of the founders are female. And I would say in the last 2 years, there's been over $4 billion that I've been tracking. And I would say most of those are female founders. So it is looking really optimistic. And I would say also all of these female-focused funds are mostly women-led as well. Definitely welcome working with men, and I have some great, male advisors and LPs. So their participation is also essential for sure. So I do have optimism that it's improving as more funding for women increases, but as you go up and up the food chain, it looks like it still needs to improve at the higher level. Like, for example, there was a quiz or a survey for endowments, and most of the universities declined to answer these DEI. So like, this is really important because larger LPs fund the funds, and if that continues to be less diverse, then that's a huge problem. So up and up the food chain, it does need to improve. And I think that will also help improve female founders that are able to get funding. And then speaking of innovating for women over 50, I don't know if you looked at our portfolio, but happy to tell you a little bit more about some of the companies. So one that comes top of mind for that is Weil, which is hormonal wellness for women 40 plus.
That's great. Yeah, no, tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I was really excited because Weil is one of our first investments, and definitely one of the first, companies I was really excited about seeing when Coyote was first getting started, and sort of the perfect example of the types of companies that we want to invest in. And they saw this huge white space where, you might go into CVS and there's really nothing that you personally might resonate with as a shopper of a woman looking for specific solutions related to menopause, because it is pretty complex. And I think that some of these supplements that existed before didn't really address the complexities of various symptoms that women suffer from. And so Weil looked at it and said, there's specific formulations that can be designed around things like stress and hot flashes and sleep, and women can pick and choose which is most essential for them. And we helped look at the science behind it. And, it's early in terms of having cohorts of women, like a clinical trial with these specific products, but there's a lot of evidence in the literature that these compounds in these plant-based formulations really do help modulate these effects. And so they are hormone-based, and there's a good amount of science behind how they actually work. And then as a fund, we're really excited to go, we're pretty agile in terms of being able to invest in a pre-seed where we, don't have all these constraints of like, we need to see your revenue, and we can't invest until you have like sales numbers from like XYZ, stores. And these companies really need this early funding to get there. And so we recognized really early on the potential of the products as well as a super strong team. And so we were able to invest at this pre-seed level. And since then, Weil has launched on their website. They also launched Grove Collaborative. And then this year they launched in Whole Foods and Walgreens, and 6,500 Walgreens stores. And then Serena Ventures also recently invested in them. So there's a lot of opportunity. There's more and more companies like Weil that will be able to fund and be that bridge of, idea to launch.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. And there's nothing like having a biochemist on the board to validate, these certain, the level of skill that you would need to actually validate, are these claims correct? And getting things through the FDA is quite enormous. I found the article that I had referenced before, and it's a group of 40 million women over 50 represent over $15 trillion in purchase power and are the healthiest, wealthiest, and most active in history. So very, very excited to have this as a feature. It's exciting that you were when you were at Impossible Foods with someone that was a great mentor and really kind of cared about the success of the entire team. When you are a mentor to people on your platform, are there 2 or 3 pieces of advice that continually comes top, that ends up being a theme that's really important for the companies in your portfolio?
Yeah, I think that one, and it's not just my own companies, but all of them, I would say finding more community. I know it can be really lonely being an entrepreneur, and I also feel it from the fund manager side as well. And I think there's some really great communities that they've evolved and developed alongside COVID, so that there's virtual, which I know sometimes we get zoomed out, but I think it's really critical. Like I've just met so many wonderful people through the virtual world of these communities, as well as, LinkedIn and Twitter. And, now there's so many places you can go and find alignment with other people that you didn't know before, and maybe might not even be a warm intro for you, but pretty amazing new connections. And I would say, it can really help on the business side as well. If you're looking to get funding, a lot of times you can go first degree network, but going, looking to go beyond that, I would say joining communities. And, for females, there's things like Dreamers and Doers. And then, for VCs, there's things like Confluence, VC 3.0. So I would say, find a couple of the things you identify as, I guess, and then find some big communities around that. And that would really help. And then as you find more and more of these, people who you feel really aligned with, I would say, working with them as, if they're interested in advisory roles, or how you can, mutually support each other, like putting some structure around some of those can be really helpful. And I've been lucky to work with some really great advisors, and some of them I've known for almost a decade. And then some of them I've met virtually and just felt really aligned, and they can help open a lot of new doors. So I would just say, build community, build new relationships, new relationships, and put some structure around that.
That's really great advice. And there's a couple of communities I want to make sure that you know about that are kind of in your space. Wellbeing Trust, started by Tyler Norris, that he was part of Kaiser Permanente, and then he went and he's been doing a lot around mental wellness. And I could see you writing, I could see your voice being part of that community. The other is Grit Health, GYRT Health. It's really an oncology platform, although they had a great relationship with Bristol Myers Squibb and ended up during the entire COVID doing some advocacy work across the globe. And they community at one point, one of their core principles was to community, and then it ended up being togetherness, only because they just learned that just well-being requires community. And so that's kind of a cool space to be in. So besides following you on Twitter and Coyote Ventures, is there any other place or any other publications? And what's the best way for us to learn from you going forward?
I am much more active on LinkedIn than Twitter. I try to log into Twitter, but it looks, normally just once or twice a week. So I don't share everything there. LinkedIn, I'm a lot more active, so you can just find Jessica Karr on there and Coyote Ventures. We have a blog on our website as well, and we're working on a few publications, and definitely we'll share those on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. So
that's great. So please tag both me, Jennifer Sertl, and Marl Startup Studio on LinkedIn. And usually what happens is once our program is released, about 3 weeks later, I'll also release a blog to reference this content and then any other links that you share with me. So I'm very much looking forward to us having continued relationship and community and what you're doing for all founders, and especially in the area of health, well-being, and female founders as well. So thank you for your time, Jessica Karr. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been great being here.
So glad you joined us today. I'd also like to thank Monroe County, Startup Grind Rochester, Upstate Venture Connect, Upstate Capital of New York, NextCore, RIT, and the University of Rochester for your partnership with Marl Startup Studio and collaboration to this entrepreneurship tipping point that we have in Rochester. Finally, I'd also like to thank our producer, Scott Fitzgerald at Rockvox Studio. If you have an idea or want to know more about our program, connect with me at jennifer@marlaccelerator.com. Please subscribe to our program, and we will continue to provide you information and inspiration about taking your idea from a concept to a business.